It was late summer when all this went down, and I was 19 years old. 19's a weird age. You're technically an adult, but you're still figuring out what that really means. I had been doing under-the-table jobs up to that point, bouncing at bars, cleaning up after drunks when the doors shut, and random labor here and there. But this was my first real steady, well-paying job. I was proud of it. For once, I had a uniform with my name stitched on the front, a time clock to punch in, and actual pay stubs. The place was a gas station we'll call the Mel store. On the surface, it looked like any other convenience store. But to me, back then, it was a step toward adulthood. I wasn't just some kid hustling for cash under the table anymore. I was working hard in the way people expected me to, and that gave me a little swagger. At Mel store, there were 3 shifts: morning, afternoon, and overnight. Sounds pretty standard, right? But the reality was anything but fair. The morning and afternoon shifts were staffed with 3 people each, enough to cover registers, stocking, cleaning, and the chaos of rush hours. The overnight shift, just 1 poor soul. And that poor soul had to be a supervisor. That poor soul on this particular night was me. I'd only been there a couple of months before getting promoted. Being bumped up to supervisor fed my teenage ego. Suddenly, I felt responsible and important. But then Jeff, the only other supervisor, quit out of nowhere. He didn't even give notice. Just walked away to start making watches for a living. Overnight, I became the only one capable of handling the night shift. Management didn't give me a choice. "We need you to cover nights until we hire someone else," they said. To soften the blow, they dangled overtime pay and the promise of a day off. For a broke 19-year-old, that was enough to get me to agree. I didn't love the idea of working graveyards alone, but money talks. That night started like any other. I told Tammy, a new coworker, that I was going to crash in the back office before midnight. I asked her to wake me up when her shift ended so I could take over. I figured a quick nap would help me get through the long, quiet hours ahead. Working the night shift had its own rhythm. At midnight, we locked the front doors. Customers couldn't come inside anymore. Instead, we operated out of a sliding drawer and a small bulletproof window near the register. Customers passed their cash or card through the drawer, and I handed back whatever they wanted: cigarettes, beer, snacks. The setup was designed for safety, because by that hour, the people coming in were usually drunk, high, or just looking for trouble. By the time the clock struck midnight, I'd only helped 3 customers. The store was dark except for the buzzing lights near the coolers and the glow from the counter. Outside, the lot was silent. It felt like the world had gone to sleep, and I was the only one awake.
Then, headlights tore into the lot. A truck barreled in so fast I thought it was going to crash right through the glass doors. At the last second, the brakes screeched. The tires left black marks on the pavement. The driver backed up a little, then parked crooked near the entrance. He climbed out, tall, lanky, medium build, wrapped in a long jacket even though it was still warm outside. His hair was dark and unkempt, sticking out like he hadn't bothered to comb it in days. From the way he moved, jittery but deliberate, I knew something was off. He walked straight up to the locked doors and just stared at me. Didn't say a word. Just stood there, grinning. "We're closed," I called out, pointing toward the window. "I can help you over here." He didn't move. His grin widened. His teeth were cracked, yellow, and stained, like he hadn't brushed in years. I'd grown up in the Midwest, so I'd seen plenty of people with bad teeth, but this was different. It wasn't just neglect, it was menace. Finally, after what felt like forever, he started walking toward the window, not normally, slowly, deliberately. Every step was exaggerated, like he wanted me to watch, like he wanted to get under my skin. So I played his game. I flicked off the main lights and walked just as slowly to the window, smirking like I wasn't bothered. Inside, though, my chest was tight. When I reached the window, he was still smiling. I expected him to ask for cigarettes or beer. Instead, he leaned close and said, "I'd like a cat in a bag." My face must have betrayed me because I just stared at him. "Excuse me? You want what now?" He squinted, then leaned in to study my name tag. His grin faded for a second. "Oh, thought you was Jeff. He leave any of the good stuff for me? An 8-ball, maybe?" The words hit like a jolt. He thought Jeff had been dealing to him. Suddenly, his behavior made sense. He didn't see me as a stranger. He saw me as a roadblock to his fix. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said carefully. "We don't have that here. Do you need anything else?" He huffed. "Gas, then." He shoved his card through the drawer. Our policy was to let people pump first and swipe afterward. It required a lot of trust. That policy would change after this night. He drove to pump 6, deliberately positioning the truck so I couldn't see him. I turned back to cleaning, telling myself I was being paranoid. 10 minutes later, I realized the pump hadn't beeped. That was unusual. When I checked, my stomach dropped.
He was standing outside the locked front doors again, but this time he was drenched. His jacket, his jeans, even his hair, soaked. The sharp, nauseating stench hit me immediately. Gasoline. He was covered in it, and he was smiling. I froze. For a split second, I told myself maybe the pump malfunctioned, maybe it overflowed, maybe this was just a horrible accident. But then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a lighter. Adrenaline surged. My hands shook as I slammed the emergency stop, cutting power to the pumps. My other hand reached under the register and pressed the silent alarm, a small pager that alerted police and fire instantly. He started laughing, loud, manic laughter that echoed across the lot. He flicked the lighter open and shut, trying to spark it. Bang! Bang! He slammed his free hand against the glass door, smearing gasoline across it. His eyes were wide and wild. "Tell Jeff I want my stuff," he screamed, over and over, louder each time. "Tell Jeff I want my stuff." I was trapped, a flimsy glass door between me and a man soaked in gasoline, ready to ignite. Red and blue lights cut through the night. Police cruisers screeched into the lot. A fire truck followed. But instead of calming him down, their arrival made him more desperate. He waved the lighter at them. "Stay back! Stay back!" And then he did it. He struck the flame. The fire raced up his body instantly, a living torch. His laughter turned to screams, shrill and raw. He staggered, thrashing, his skin blistering in seconds. The smell hit me even through the glass, burning hair, burning flesh. It's a smell I'll never forget. Firefighters rushed him, throwing heavy blankets over his body, tackling him to the pavement. He fought them, still trying to clutch the lighter, but they smothered the flames after several agonizing seconds. His skin was blackened, his clothes fused to him. The gasoline on the ground never caught. If it had, the whole store might have gone up. If that glass had broken, I might have gone up with it. They hauled him into an ambulance. Later, I learned he died in the hospital, not just from burns, but from the cocktail of drugs in his system. His body couldn't take it. The aftermath was brutal. For days, the smell lingered at the front doors. No matter how hard we scrubbed, it clung to the air. Charred skin, singed hair. Customers wrinkled their noses as they walked in. I gagged every time I passed that spot. I lasted one more month before putting in my 2 weeks' notice. Overtime pay wasn't worth it anymore. The night shift wasn't worth it anymore. Every creak in the empty store made me jump. Every headlight pulling into the lot made me tense. I couldn't unsee that smile or the way his skin melted as the flames consumed him. I left Mel's store behind, but the memory never left me.
A little backstory before I dive into this. I was active duty Marine a year before this event happened. Like every Marine, I went through the training designed to prepare us for combat, to fight, to kill, and to survive in places far from home. Sadly, I never got deployed. At the time, that felt like a failure, like I hadn't lived up to the role I had signed up for. But looking back, the discipline, awareness, and mental toughness I learned in the Corps saved my life during what I'm about to share. If I hadn't been trained to control my fear, to analyze quickly, and to act under pressure, I genuinely don't think I'd be here telling you this. This happened last year on a cool summer night in Arizona. I was exhausted from working 2 jobs. My routine was brutal. Mornings at one job, evenings at another. Barely enough time to eat or sleep. That night, I had grabbed a late dinner with a coworker after our shift. By the time I dropped her off and started heading home, it was around 2 a.m. I was driving through near empty streets when I passed by a gas station. I figured I could use an energy drink to help me get through the following morning. Without much thought, I pulled in. The place was deserted, not a single car at the pumps. The fluorescent lights above the lot flickered faintly, casting uneven shadows across the cracked pavement. That's when I noticed him. At first, it was just a movement out of the corner of my eye, a shadow slipping along the wall of the building. As I rolled up in front of the entrance and turned off the engine, the shadow resolved into a man. He clung close to the wall, moving slowly, deliberately, like he didn't want to be seen. I should have paid more attention, but honestly, I was too tired to care. I figured he was just some drunk or homeless guy about to ask me for change. People like that were common enough in the area, and usually, if you brushed them off politely, they'd wander away. As I stepped out of my car, I finally got a good look at him. He pulled away from the shadows just enough that I could see the outline of his face. His mouth opened slightly, like he was about to say something. But I didn't give him the chance. "Hey, I'll be right back, sir," I said quickly, brushing him off. He just stared at me, silent. Eyes locked onto me as I walked toward the door. His stillness should have been a warning sign, but fatigue clouded my judgment. I shook it off, stepped inside, grabbed my energy drink, and paid the cashier, who looked just as tired as I felt. When I came back out, the man was gone. I scanned the lot, feeling a flicker of unease. Then, as I neared my car, he emerged again, this time from a dark corner of the building, watching me intently. Something about him felt wrong, predatory. I wasn't sticking around to find out why. I pulled my keys, intent on getting in my car and driving off. But then I heard it, rapid footsteps closing in from behind me. Instinct kicked in. I spun around fast, just in time to lock eyes with him. He was right there, too close, less than an arm's length away. For a split second, every option ran through my head. Jump in the car, slam the door, peel out. But he was already too close. If I moved too suddenly, he'd have me before I even sat down. So I forced myself to stay calm, diffuse the situation, buy time. "Hey, it's you again," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is there something I can do for you?" His response came in a scratchy whisper. "Got any change?" Relief washed over me. Perfect! I could end this peacefully. "Sure do. Hold on, I'll dig it out for you." I leaned into my car, reaching for the loose change I kept in the console. That's when I heard it, the faint creak of my passenger side door opening. Before I could react, a hand clamped down on my hair, yanking my head backward into the driver's seat. I felt a sudden sharp sting across my throat as cold steel pressed against my skin.
"You fucking scream or yell, I'll fucking kill you," he hissed. His breath was hot against my ear. The knife traced lightly along my neck, just enough to let me know he could end me in an instant. "Understand?" I nodded slowly, my muscles locked in terror. "Now we're going to New Mexico. Don't do anything stupid or I'll cover your car's interior with your blood." In that moment, my thoughts scattered. This can't be real. This kind of shit doesn't happen to me. Fuck. Think. And then, like an echo from the past, I heard my commanding officer's words. "The key to victory is a clear conscience and a cool head." So I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to think. Panicking would only make him twitchy, and a twitchy man with a knife at your throat doesn't end well. "Okay," I said carefully. "How do you want to do this? You'll tell me directions?" His grip loosened slightly, just enough for me to breathe easier. "Good. Smart kid. I hate it when they beg. Now use your GPS or whatever." The knife was still pressed against me, but not as tightly. I could feel his arrogance growing, his confidence that he had me under control. That arrogance would be my chance. I started driving. The road stretched ahead, silent except for the hum of the engine. Every 5 minutes or so, I could feel the blade slackening, shifting slightly away from my skin. He was still holding it, but the pressure wasn't as firm. We drove like that for what felt like forever. My brain was on overdrive, scanning for any opportunity. I knew if I made one wrong move, he'd slit my throat, but if I did nothing, I'd end up dead in some desert ditch anyway. And then, at an intersection, I saw it. Headlights. A Ford Ranger barreling down the cross street, approaching fast. "Do you really want to die a coward?" I asked myself. I slammed my foot on the gas. The world erupted. The car lurched forward into the intersection. The impact with the truck sent a deafening boom through my skull. My body slammed against the seatbelt as chaos unfolded in slow motion. But instinct took over. I grabbed his wrist, the one holding the knife, and shoved it hard against the steering wheel. The horn blared continuously, filling the night with a desperate cry for help. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He ripped his hand free, dropped the knife, and bolted out of the car. My head spun, vision blurry, but I could just make out his silhouette sprinting into the darkness. Before I could move, the driver of the Ford Ranger yanked open my door, shouting, "Hey, what the hell happened? Do you have insurance?" I barely heard him. I was screaming, "Don't let him get away!" My voice was hoarse, desperate, but it was too late. The man was gone, swallowed by the night. The police arrived soon after. I told them everything, every detail, every word he said. They wrote it down, nodded, promised to investigate. But deep down, I knew how it would go. A vague description, no clear leads. He would vanish like a ghost. And that's exactly what happened. Nothing ever came of it. But something in me changed that night. I had faced death in a gas station parking lot, not on deployment, not overseas, but here, at home, just trying to buy an energy drink. Now I never leave home unarmed. I carry my gun, I carry knives, and I carry the lesson burned into me that night. Never again will I let myself be caught off guard. Because monsters don't just exist in stories. Sometimes they wait in the shadows of empty gas stations.
I'm a female, and this story happened while I was working the day shift at a gas station in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was a Saturday morning, fairly quiet, the kind of shift where nothing much happens. Saturdays were usually slow, and this one was no different. My assistant manager, Dan, was locked in the back office counting money, and I was out front of the register doing my usual chores, wiping down counters, straightening items, making sure everything looked good for when the day finally picked up. The store was so quiet that I could hear the faint hum of the coolers in the background. I remember thinking how boring it was when the door suddenly opened. A man walked in. He was tall and lanky, with tan skin and messy, dark, wavy hair. He wore a long green jacket over jeans and a t-shirt, clothes that looked a little too heavy for the season. He didn't say a word, just moved quickly toward the bathroom. I greeted him like I would any customer, but he didn't acknowledge me. He disappeared into the men's restroom, and I figured he was just in a hurry. People in a rush to use the bathroom wasn't unusual, so I didn't think much of it and went back to cleaning. A few minutes later, my quiet routine was broken by the sound of the bathroom door opening. The man came out looking flustered. "Excuse me, miss, I'm so sorry," he said. He sounded overly apologetic. "I accidentally clogged the toilet and it's really bad." He repeated himself several times, his voice rushed, almost desperate. I assured him it was fine, that I would take care of it. Cleaning bathrooms was part of my job, but he kept shaking his head. "I can clean it up. Do you have a plunger or something?" I told him no, that it wasn't his responsibility. Don't worry about it. It's my job. But he wouldn't let it go. He kept insisting, his tone a little too forceful now. At first, I thought maybe he was just embarrassed and trying to be polite, but the more he pushed, the stranger it felt. Something about his eagerness to help set me on edge. I told him again, firmly, that I'd take care of it and started walking toward the supply closet. It was located in between the men's and women's restrooms. I figured that's where the plunger would be. But when I glanced back, I realized he was following right behind me. My stomach sank.
When we reached the bathrooms, he suddenly swung open the men's restroom door and held it open for me. "Come on," he said, smiling faintly. "I'll help you clean it." My heart dropped. The way he stood there, waiting, was all wrong. My instinct screamed at me not to go anywhere near that bathroom. Every part of me knew that stepping inside would be a mistake. I shook my head. "I'll clean it," I said, my voice unsteady. "I just have to get my assistant manager." But he kept pressing. "I feel bad. Just come in and we'll clean it." "No," I said again, backing away. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I turned and started walking quickly toward the office. He followed close, almost hovering at my shoulder. I knocked on the office door, trying to stay calm even though panic was clawing at my chest. Dan opened the door, looking a little annoyed at being interrupted. "I need your help out front," I said, forcing a smile that I hoped didn't look as terrified as I felt. He almost shut the door again, but I locked eyes with him and said, "Dan, I really need you up here." I think the urgency in my face gave me away. He caught on. Dan stepped out and immediately started talking to the man who once again launched into his story about clogging the toilet. I used the moment to put on gloves and slip into the restroom myself. The sight that greeted me made my skin crawl. The toilet wasn't clogged with anything normal. He had deliberately stuffed it full of paper towels, nothing else. No accident, no mistake. He had staged the whole thing. My hands trembled as I pulled off the gloves and walked back out. The man turned to look at me, and the expression on his face made me shiver. He smiled at me like a child who had just pulled off a prank, as if this was all some kind of game. Still murmuring apologies, he brushed the back of his hand down my arm as he walked past me. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. If I hadn't been so shocked, I would have told him to keep his hands off me, but in the moment, I just stood there, numb.
He lingered for a few more minutes before finally heading outside to pump gas. Even then, he kept glancing back through the glass doors, smiling, like he wanted to make sure I knew he was still watching. When he was gone, I immediately told Dan what I'd found in the bathroom and how the man had acted. Dan was disturbed by the story, clearly realizing how close the situation had come to something worse. A few days later, one of my regulars came in and mentioned seeing the man outside the station being spoken to by police. Apparently, he had been told he wasn't allowed in the area anymore. Hearing that brought some relief, but it didn't erase the memory of his smile, or the way my heart had raced when he tried to lure me into that bathroom. Even now, I shudder when I think about what could have happened if I'd ignored my instincts and stepped inside with him. Since that day, I've kept pepper spray hidden under my register at all times. It doesn't matter whether it's day or night, busy or slow. I know now that danger doesn't always wait for darkness. Sometimes it walks in on a quiet Saturday morning, smiling, wearing a green jacket.